Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, and this is the third installment of fixing the doghouse. Pretty much taking off from where we left last week, fixing the hatch cover for the companionway, at least restoring it a little bit. This is now the second coat I think I've done. I'm using a very cheap coating. It's just something I had lying around. I know that this is not going to be final. I'm probably going to have to do this multiple times, and we want to replace this all together. As you can see, we're sanding it again. This is now, I think, several hours later. Going smaller and smaller grit on the sandpaper. I think this is now 120 grit. And I want to make sure that this looks semi-okay. But why bother with all this trouble to make this look semi-good if we're going to replace it? I don't know when we're going to replace it. It could be several months to several years, so I want it to look a little bit well and a little bit nice. And with each coat, each pass, it looks progressively nicer. Even with this cheap varnish that I had lying around, it still looks pretty good. I think this will be the last time I'll do this in a few years or a few months. I think it's good enough. So while all of this has been happening, the fairing in the doghouse on the seating areas has dried up, I think, and it's probably a good time to start sanding. This is much the same as always. I think the only difference here is I'm now on 180 grit sandpaper, and although you can see slight imperfections and waves on the seating area, you can't actually feel it. So if you run your hand up and down it, it feels really smooth and pretty good, I'd say. I think, and I'll probably change my mind, but for now I think this is good enough. We'll give it a final coat or two of paint before we start on the top coat, but that'll be in a couple of weeks' time. If you'll recall from last week, the port side seating area was the worst. That's where most of the rot and damage was initially. And here you can see I did a lot more fairing on it. It's looking much better. It feels great, but it needs a lot more sanding. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say probably even more fairing. I'm going to leave it for now, and I'll make my decision at a later stage, after a good coat of paint, and see what it looks like. I've gotten into the habit while I'm sanding to periodically run my hand over the area. Gives you a really good indication of whether you're being successful or not. In this case, the whole area really feels good. I've now swapped to an even smaller grit. I think we're at 220 grit, and this will hopefully make it even better. So as usual, I'll work my way back to where I started on the starboard side, now with the higher grit sandpaper, and same thing, run my hand over it, pull it across, and just feel as I go. So I know that there's a lot of sanding involved. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of it. It's not the most captivating footage to watch, but hopefully it shows the process and even better get an idea of the work involved in trying to get something like this done well. The preparation is what's going to make the finish look good, and the more you put into the preparation, the better the finish will be. So it's worth taking the time to try and do it as well as you can, as good as you can. You'll reap the rewards of the hard work. Of course, this includes removal of all loose sanding particles. My makeshift vacuum sanding attachment with some duct tape works really well, but it does leave tiny little bits of sanding dust everywhere. A little bit of acetone wipe down gets rid of the rest on a nice clean cloth. I'm going through these cloths, like a lot of cloths. I thought I'd show you this. This is a pitcher plant which I've had for many years, and it's making a new trap. In future videos you'll be able to see, based on that, how long it's been between videos. Alright, painting. Starting on the one edge. Again, this is a two-part primer. It's Interguard 263, 269, and white. And we'll just apply the light coat and then come back on it. By the time we're done, we end up with another 2 coats or so. By layering this in between, I get a very good idea of where the look and feel of the seating area is going to go. The final coat will be Interthane 990, which is a sort of a glossy and very hard top coat paint. And if this looks bad, it'll look really bad with the final part. However, I have decided to get some faux teak and glue it on here to give a nice seating area. I just need to find a supplier that's not stupid expensive. You can see here some of the blue, the previous fairing, and some of the orange fairing and previous coats of this coat that I'm putting on now, the primer. Just the amount of sanding in between coats, but it just leaves a really good finish. And as I said, it's completely worth it in the end for a good result. And for some reason this stuff makes me sneeze every time I work with it. Don't know why. Right, I'm now joined by Carolyn, who's come to help sand this area off. We are going to do a better job of this. We decided not to keep the wood. In fact, when you get down to it and you start scraping and sanding, you realize that a lot of this is not varnish. A lot of it is a shoe polish stain. We actually found some of this stuff in a box when we moved the board, and we thought, well, they had lots of brown shoes. No, they were using this everywhere, and I guess in a way it sort of makes sense. It's a waxy substance, it's a shoe polish, and if you put it on wood, it'll probably give it really good water resistance. but it's terrible to work with, and it leaves a terrible stain on everything, and after years and years it's dried into a sort of a gunk. So it's all got to come off, and I'm being quite abrasive here. I think this is an 80 grit paper, and even that didn't work, so I went to a 60 grit. Yeah, so here you can see the 60 grits are actually getting rid of some of the stuff, but it clogs up the paper very quickly. We'll just paint this. We'll just paint this white, and we'll give it a very light coat to protect it, and decide how we're going to handle it later. Maybe we do a nice trim. While I'm there, I'm quickly doing the outside as well and getting some of those flaky bits off. Still have to decide what I'm going to do over here and how I'm going to paint it, but it all needs to be scraped and sanded. That there would have been the vent for our gas heating system, which has been removed off the boat. Carolyn quickly does a sanding on the back area, so I can give it a very light coat. This entire area up until the sides is going to get removed. We're going to get rid of that canvas, we're going to make new canvas and probably extend the doghouse a little bit so we can put a third solar panel under the boom just after the doghouse. And it leaves gaps, so water comes in, it literally collects here, so that can't have helped the wood over the years. But all of this work is almost nearing completion. I'll come back to this in a couple of weeks. I have some footage I've started on already as we're prepping for the top coat, and I'll show that to you in the next week or two. Next week I'll start on the toe rail again. The toe rail's coming along quite nicely, and it's important work. The sooner we do it before the rainy season, the better we can seal off the edges. That'll just help. So I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, please comment. I love to read, and I'll see you next time. Bye.